Welcome to our channel. Hollywood Movie Review. Captain America, Brave New World 2025 Movie Review. Captain America, Brave New World is a 2025 American superhero film based on Marvel Comics featuring the character Sam Wilson / Captain America. Produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, it is the fourth installment in the Captain America film series, a continuation of the television miniseries The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021, and the 35th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. The film was directed by Julius Onah from a screenplay by Rob Edwards and the writing teams of Malcolm Spellman and Dallin Musson and Onah and Peter Glanz. It stars Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson / Captain America alongside Danny Ramirez, Shira Haas, Carl Lumbly, Kosharog Moore, Giancarlo Esposito, Liv Tyler, Tim Blake Nelson, and Harrison Ford. In the film, Wilson investigates a conspiracy involving U.S. President Thaddeus Ross Ford. Captain America: Civil War, 2016, ended the Captain America trilogy starring Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, and Wilson becomes the new Captain America in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Series writers Spellman and Musson were writing a new Captain America film by April 2021, and Mackie signed on that August. Onah joined in July 2022, when the title Captain America: New World Order was announced. Additional cast members joined later that year. Nelson and Tyler returned from the second MCU film, The Incredible Hulk, 2008, while Ford replaced William Hurt as Ross following Hurt's death in March 2022. Ross becomes the superpowered Red Hulk in the film. Filming took place from March to June 2023 at Trilith Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, with additional filming in Washington, D.C. The subtitle was changed to Brave New World during filming. Matthew Orton joined in December 2023 to write for reshoots, which took place between May and November 2024, and added Esposito to the film. The involvement of Edwards and Glanz was revealed that December. Captain America: Brave New World premiered on February 11, 2025, at the TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood, Los Angeles, and was released in the United States on February 14 as part of Phase 5 of the MCU. It grossed $415 million worldwide. The film received mixed reviews from critics for its story, connections to other MCU projects, and visual effects. The performances, particularly those of Mackie and Ford, received praise. 5 months after Thaddeus Ross is elected President of the United States, he sends Sam Wilson and Joaquin Torres, the new Captain America and Falcon, respectively, to Oaxaca, Mexico, to stop the illegal sale of classified items stolen by Sidewinder and his mercenary group Serpent. Wilson and Torres recover the items, but Sidewinder escapes. Torres is excited to be taking on Wilson's former mantle of Falcon, but Wilson is hesitant to involve Torres in dangerous missions due to the pair not having superpowers like former Captain America Steve Rogers. After the mission, Wilson and Torres train with Isaiah Bradley, a super soldier who was imprisoned and experimented on by the US government. Ross invites Wilson and Torres to a summit with world leaders at the White House, and Wilson accepts on the condition that Bradley is also invited. Ross asks Wilson to help him reform the Avengers. During the summit, Ross explains that a new metal, adamantium, has been discovered on Celestial Island, which was formed when the celestial Tiamut emerged in the Indian Ocean. The recovered items were the first refined samples of the metal and were stolen from a Japanese mining operation. To avoid an arms race, Ross proposes a treaty to govern adamantium's mining and distribution. As he is talking, the song Mr. Blue plays and causes several men, including Bradley, to begin shooting at Ross and other dignitaries. Apprehended by Ross's head of security, former Black Widow Ruth Bat-Sarov, the men regain their senses and deny any knowledge of the attack. While investigating, Wilson is ambushed by Sidewinder and captures him. Torres tracks a call on Sidewinder's phone to a hidden black site in West Virginia called Camp Echo 1. Ross tries to salvage the treaty, but the Japanese government blames him for the theft of their adamantium and the subsequent White House attack. Ross realizes that the mastermind behind these events is Dr. Samuel Stearns, who gained advanced intelligence after being exposed to the blood of Bruce Banner/Hulk during the Abomination's rampage through Harlem. Ross imprisoned Stearns at Camp Echo 1, publicly blamed him for the Abomination's actions, and promised to release him if Stearns helped advance him to the presidency. Wilson and Torres find Stearns and learn how he uses technology and the song Mr. Blue to control minds. He escapes while they are fighting mind-controlled soldiers. Ross sends Bat Seraph to secure Camp Echo 1, where she finds and helps Wilson and Torres. The trio meet with Wilson's military friend Dennis Dunphy, who has Sidewinder in custody. Wilson learns enough from Sidewinder to deduce Stearns's plan to destroy Ross's reputation. Wilson, Torres, and Bat Seraph go to Celestial Island where Ross and Ozaki, the Prime Minister of Japan, are racing to claim ownership of adamantium. Ross tells Wilson that he is dying of heart failure and had Stearns develop pills that have prolonged his life. Ross refused to release Stearns for fear that he would no longer make the pills, leading to Stearns's anger and plans for revenge. Stearns takes control of the minds of 2 American pilots and makes them attack the Japanese fleet. Wilson and Torres intercept the planes and convince the Japanese to stand down, but Torres is injured in the fight. Wilson is consoled by his friend Bucky Barnes. Stearns kills Dunphy, who learned that the pills have been adding gamma radiation to Ross's body, and surrenders himself to Wilson. Stearns's arrest and connection to Ross are publicly revealed while the latter is at a press conference. Ross loses control of his emotions and transforms into a Red Hulk, destroying part of the White House. Wilson injures Ross enough that he can be reasoned with, and reminds Ross of visits to Washington, D.C.'s cherry blossom trees with his estranged daughter Betty. Ross reverts to normal. After the incident, Bradley is exonerated. Wilson invites a recovering Torres to join the Avengers, and the treaty is ratified. Ross resigns and has himself incarcerated at the Raft, where Wilson and Betty visit him. In a post-credits scene, an imprisoned Stearns warns Wilson of a coming attack from other worlds. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige said in October 2015 that Captain America: Civil War, 2016, was the conclusion of the Captain America trilogy starring Chris Evans as Steve Rogers/Captain America, after Captain America: The First Avenger, 2011, and Captain America: The Winter Soldier, 2014. Civil War was Evans's last contracted standalone Captain America film, but he was open to extending his contract beyond the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, crossover films Avengers: Infinity War, 2018, and Avengers: Endgame, 2019. In January 2021, Evans was reportedly close to signing a deal to return as Rogers in at least one project. Evans's involvement was said to be similar to how fellow MCU star Robert Downey Jr. had supporting roles as Tony Stark/Iron Man in other MCU films following the Iron Man trilogy. Evans said the report was news to. By October 2018, Marvel Studios was developing a limited series for Disney Plus starring Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson/Falcon and Sebastian Stan's Bucky Barnes/Winter Soldier from the MCU films. Malcolm Spellman was hired as head writer of the series, which was officially announced as The Falcon and the Winter Soldier in April 2019. After Rogers bequeaths his shield and the mantle of Captain America to Wilson in Endgame, the series shows Wilson accepting the mantle and coming to terms with the implications of that as a black man. Before the series premiered, Mackie said there had been no discussions regarding a second season and he was not sure when he would next appear in an MCU film because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Series director Carrie Skogland was also unsure whether there would be a second season, saying she told the story she wanted to with the first season, but there were more stories and characters to explore if a second was made. Executive producer Nate Moore said the series had evergreen topics that lent themselves to further exploration and set up ideas for a potential second season. Feige said there were ideas for what another one could be, but Marvel intended for the series to lead into an MCU film first, as they did with fellow Disney miniseries WandaVision, 2021. After the series finale of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, One World, One People, was released in April 2021, Spellman and series writer Dallin Musson were revealed to be writing a fourth Captain America film that continues Wilson's story. Rob Edwards said he was the original writer for the film. Evans's reported return as Rogers was expected to come in a different project. Mackie said he was unaware of any plans for a film or second season, but was excited to see what happened next and said it would be monumental for him to headline an MCU film, particularly as a black actor. Mackie negotiated a deal to star in the film over the next few months, and officially signed on in August. He later said he had been excited to make a second season of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier with Stan and their co-star Daniel Bruhl, who portrays Helmut Zima, and was disappointed by the pivot to starring in a film without them. Julius Onah was hired to direct the film in July 2022, after several meetings with Moore and co-producer Kiana Davidson in which they discussed character, themes, and tone. Onah was championed to Feige and Mackie by actress Octavia Spencer, who starred in his film Loose, 2019. Spencer is included in the special thanks section of the film's credits. Key elements were set by the time Onah joined. He said it was always going to be a Sam Wilson story and Wilson would not be conflicted about being Captain America. That question has been resolved. Sam is our Captain America now. The characters Samuel Stearns and Thaddeus Ross, who were first introduced in the second MCU film, The Incredible Hulk, 2008, were also set to appear. The inclusion of Stearns was one of the reasons Onah was interested in the film, feeling that someone who operates from intellect would be a good adversary for Wilson. Onah was drawn to the relationships between Wilson and Ross, and between Wilson and Joaquin Torres/Falcon, who was introduced in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. As Onah further developed the film with Spellman and Musson, they also leaned into Wilson's relationship with another The Falcon and the Winter Soldier character, Isaiah Bradley. Onah felt these three relationships were integral to Wilson's journey in the film, connecting to his past and future. Isaiah's grandson Eli was included in early versions of the script, but was removed due to the large number of characters in the film and the focus on other relationships. Onah said the combination of Wilson, Ross, and Stearns organically led to the film's thriller tone, with elements of paranoid thrillers, political thrillers, and action thrillers. It was described as more grounded than some recent MCU films, closer to the tone of The Winter Soldier. The filmmakers always intended to bring back Stan for a scene with Barnes and Wilson together, but this was kept secret until the film's release. Onah said there was no way we were gonna completely divorce these two characters from each other after The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Several different places in the film were considered before they settled on a moment where Barnes provides emotional support for Wilson later in the film. Another element planned before Onah joined was the Serpent Society, a group of snake-themed villains from the comics. This paid off a joke Marvel made years earlier when announcing the third Captain America film as Captain America, Serpent Society, before revealing its true subtitle to be Civil War. Moore acknowledged that the team can come across as goofy, but he considered them to be part of Captain America's all-time Hall of Fame villain groups and wanted to treat them seriously. Onah said their challenge in developing the film was trying to fit the different elements into the intended thriller tone. He added that despite the connections to The Incredible Hulk and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they wanted the film to work on its own. Mackie said viewers did not need to have seen The Incredible Hulk to watch the film, calling it a reset of the MCU that establishes new themes and antagonists for the universe moving forward. Onah said it was important to call back to The Incredible Hulk as part of Ross's story, but he wanted these elements to be revealed through Wilson's point of view. Later in July 2022 at San Diego Comic-Con, the film's title was revealed to be Captain America, New World Order, and it was given a release date of May 3, 2024, making it part of Phase 5 of the MCU. The subtitle, which is also the name of the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, was noted for its use in politics, professional wrestling, and various conspiracy theories along with anti-Semitic rhetoric, and was deemed to be a controversial choice. Several cast members were announced at the D23 Expo that September: Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres/Falcon and Carl Lumbly as Isaiah Bradley, both reprising their roles from The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stearns, returning from The Incredible Hulk, and Israeli actress Shira Haas as the comic book character Sabra. Onah said filming would begin in early 2023. The announcement that Sabra, an Israeli superheroine, would be adapted for the film led to criticisms from some people who believed this would lead to negative stereotypical portrayals of Palestinians and Arabs. In the comics, Sabra is a member of the Mossad, and some of the Arab characters she interacts with were perceived to be misogynistic, anti-Semitic, and violent. The name Sabra also has different meanings to Israeli Jews and Palestinians. The Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel criticized the use of the character and called the comic book version's valorization of Mossad and perceived racism against Palestinians sickening. Youssef Munayyer, a Palestinian-American writer and analyst, felt the character could not have a positive role in the film based on her depiction in the comics, and said turning Israeli spies into heroes was insensitive and disgraceful. In response, Marvel Studios said the film was taking a new approach to the character, just as other comics characters had been reimagined for modern audiences when brought into the MCU. This led to concerns from some other groups that Marvel was erasing the character's Israeli background, which the American Jewish Committee, AJC, compared to making Captain America Canadian. In the film, the character is a former Black Widow and high-ranking U.S. government official named Ruth Bat-Sarov. The name Sabra is not used, nor is she a mutant or Mossad agent, but the character is depicted as a first-generation Israeli, has an Israeli accent, and Moore said she has the attitude and the essence of the comics character. He reiterated that the character's backstory was not changed in response to public concerns, and explained that using the Black Widow program to adapt characters who Marvel Studios didn't want to translate as one-to-one from the comics was a general idea that came up during the making of the film Black Widow, 2021. The character's inclusion prompted some calls to boycott the film, in part due to the Gaza war. Some supporters of Israel took issue with the character having allegiance to the U.S. government, while some who are critical of Israel protested the film's use of the character due to her depiction in the comics. With confirmation that the character would still be depicted as Israeli in the film, the AJC and the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, both praised the decision. In October 2022, Moore was revealed to be producing New World Order alongside Feige. Harrison Ford was cast as Thaddeus Ross that month, replacing William Hurt, who portrayed the character in the MCU until his death in March 2022. Ford was reported to be appearing as Ross in this film as well as the following MCU film Thunderbolts*, 2025. Marvel Studios planned for Ross to transform into Red Hulk in the film. Referencing the character's history of hunting for Bruce Banner/Hulk, Moore said, "Turning a guy who hunted Hulks into a Hulk himself makes him more than an antagonist, it makes him a tragic character." The studio informed Hurt of their plans to have Ross become Red Hulk, and he had been eager to portray that aspect of the character. They considered changing course with Ross's role in the film following Hurt's death, believing no actor would want to take over from him. During that time, Ford reached out to Feige about possibly joining the MCU and agreed to take on the role without seeing a script. Ford saw playing Ross as an opportunity to honor what Hurt had done with the character and also continue with the character arc that he had enjoyed from the previous films. In the film, Ross becomes the President of the United States and finds himself at odds with Wilson amidst a global conspiracy. Moore drew comparisons to the 1974 comic book storyline Secret Empire. He noted that Wilson wears a costume featuring the colors of the American flag while facing off with the US president, and said the film's story was about the notion of a guy who believes an ideal, realizing that ideal is not always held up to the same standards by other people, and feeling really betrayed by where the American government has gone. Onah drew comparisons to Ford's film Clear and Present Danger, 1994, which features a similar conspiracy involving the president. He wanted to feature themes of bringing people together and focusing on shared experiences, believing these were central to Captain America and Sam Wilson's character, which he thought had political resonance but was more about humanity than politics. Marvel Studios was supportive of this, despite Feige joking about Onah trying to save America with the film. Pre-production work at Trilith Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, began on November 7 ahead of a planned filming start in March 2023. Onah directed cinematographer Kramer Morgenthau, production designer Ramsey Avery, and costume designer Gersha Phillips to be specific about how they used the color red in the film, avoiding it in many scenes to make the appearance of Red Hulk at the end of the film more impactful. When red is used in earlier scenes, it is to signify chaos, while blue tones represent peacefulness and a sense of things being under control. Avery, who worked on the MCU films Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, 2017, and Spider-Man: Homecoming, 2017, reiterated that their intent was for the film to be more grounded in reality than recent MCU films. He said it was important to Onah and Feige that the film feel like it was taking place in the current space, a very real and honest world. Mackie's Captain America costume was redesigned from the one seen in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was based on the mostly white costume that Wilson is known for wearing as Captain America in the comics. The new costume for Brave New World is mostly dark blue, with red and white accents, closer to the costumes Evans wore in The Winter Soldier and other films. The cowl that Mackie wore for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was removed at his request, as he struggled with the heat, the sweat, the fogged-up glasses, and said it was his worst nightmare. Ryan Mean Writing, Marvel Studios head of visual development, worked on the costume. Kosha Roguemore joined the cast in January 2023. Mackie expected to begin work on March 1 that month. Washington, D.C.'s Office of Cable Television, Film, Music, and Entertainment said Marvel Studios would be filming in the city in June. Also in early 2023, Onah reached out to Liv Tyler about reprising her role as Ross's daughter Betty from The Incredible Hulk. Tyler was confirmed to be returning soon after filming began. Principal photography began on March 21, 2023, at Trilith Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, with Kramer Morgenthau as cinematographer. The film was made under the working title Rochelle, a reference to the television series Seinfeld, 1989–1998, that was suggested by Davidson. Morgenthau, who worked on the MCU film Thor: The Dark World, 2013, said they wanted to pay homage to the visuals of thriller films from the 1970s such as Clute, 1971, The Day of the Jackal, 1973, The Parallax View, 1974, and All the President's Men, 1976. Wanting a look as close to photographic film as could be achieved with digital cameras, they tested with vintage anamorphic lenses and made a set of rules for camera movement, color, composition, and texture. Early in filming, there was a week of character-focused scenes featuring Mackie, Ramirez, and Ford. Ramirez's first scene was the film's final moment between Wilson and Torres. At the end of March, Julia Louis-Dreyfus was reported to be reprising her MCU role as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine in the film. Onah wanted the action scenes to be grounded and tactile, and give Wilson things to do that were not seen in his previous appearances. While Wilson is at peak human performance and aided by technology, Onah kept in mind that the character does not have superpowers. The start of the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike in May was not expected to impact the film's production, with Marvel Studios reportedly planning to shoot what they could during principal photography and make any necessary writing adjustments during the film's already scheduled reshoots. Later in May, set photos revealed that Seth Rollins was part of the cast and led to speculation that he was portraying a member of the Serpent Society. In June, Marvel Studios announced the new title Captain America: Brave New World. Jeremy Mathai at /Film praised the change, saying it strikes a far more optimistic perspective than New World Order, doubling as a commentary on the future of the famous superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and as a statement on some very overdue representation. The change was also deemed wise by Collider's Hilary Remley, who noted that the original title could have been interpreted as having anti-Semitic connotations. Moore explained that Marvel Studios felt New World Order was really interesting, and sort of moody and scary for a subtitle and was not intended to represent real-world issues. The studio decided to change the title after receiving feedback about how the phrase New World Order had been co-opted in the real world in a way that made people uncomfortable. At the time of the new subtitles announcement, Onah was revealed to have co-written the script. The film's release date was soon delayed to July 26, 2024. Onah said Washington, D.C., was an important location for the film because it is where Ross is based as President of the U.S., but also because it is where Wilson was first introduced to the MCU in The Winter Soldier, and it is close to Isaiah's home in Baltimore, Maryland. The cherry blossom trees that are planted around DC are featured throughout the film, including during Wilson's climactic fight with Red Hulk. Onah said he had vivid memories of the cherry blossoms from the time he lived near DC in Arlington, Virginia, as a child, and to him they aligned with the film's themes of empathy since they were gifts to the US from Japan. Several DC locations were recreated by the production at Trilith Studios, including the Oval Office, the White House Rose Garden, the White House Bunker, and Haines Point. Filming also took place at a replica of the White House at Tyler Perry Studios, also in Atlanta. The recreated locations included a mixture of practical and digital cherry blossom trees. At the end of June, filming moved to DC for a week of location shooting. Mackie said this brought his MCU experience full circle, with the production staying at the same hotel and filming in the same areas as they did for The Winter Soldier. Filming for Brave New World wrapped on June 30th. By October 2023, there was potential for Brave New World to return to its May 2024 release date because it was further along in production than Marvel Studios' Deadpool and Wolverine, 2024, which had taken over that date. However, this was considered unlikely, and Brave New World's release was instead delayed to February 14, 2025, following the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike's conclusion in November 2023. Journalist Jeff Snyder reported that the film was not received well in an early test screening, that 3 major sequences were being cut, and that extensive reshoots were planned from January 2024 until that May or June. In December, Matthew Orton was hired to write additional material for the reshoots, which were then scheduled to last from early to mid-2024. Orton previously worked on the Marvel Studios miniseries Moon Knight, 2022. The same day, Rosa Salazar was revealed to have been cast in the film, and was later reported to be portraying Diamondback, a member of the Serpent Society. This confirmed speculation that she was playing the character based on her appearance in set photos. Mark Ruffalo stated in February 2024 that he was reprising his MCU role as Bruce Banner/Hulk in the film. Adam B. Vary of Variety soon reported that Ruffalo was not appearing in the film, explaining that the actor had misspoken when he was asked about the film and had just intended to express enthusiasm for its upcoming release. Vary noted that there had been ongoing speculation about Ruffalo potentially appearing in the film due to the number of characters from The Incredible Hulk already included and Ross's transformation into Red Hulk. Onah said they considered including Ruffalo, but felt this would take away from Wilson's story. Giancarlo Esposito revealed in May 2024 that he had been cast in an MCU role and would be appearing sooner rather than later, with his character being teased in a film before a bigger role in an MCU television series. He was confirmed to be appearing in Brave New World at the end of the month as part of the reshoots, which began at that time in Atlanta and were scheduled to last for 22 days. These were expected to be less extensive than the reshoots for the MCU films Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, 2022, and The Marvels, 2023, focusing on new action sequences and integrating Esposito. Brave New World was also expected to be much less expensive than The Marvels, which cost more than $300 million. The budget for Brave New World was reported to be $180 million. Nelson returned to Atlanta for reshoots in June, and said they redid much of his original work. Mackie characterized the reshoots as just adding a few additional scenes to enhance the film and said there was no retooling or remaking. Moore said the reshoots were focused on creating the perfect political thriller tone, and the casting of Esposito was part of this. He believed the actor made the film more grounded despite his heightened material, similar to his role in the television series The Mandalorian, 2019 to 2023. Ford and Takehiro Hira also participated in the reshoots. The film's post-credits scene, in which Wilson is warned about coming threats from the multiverse, was filmed during reshoots. Onah explained that they waited until writing on upcoming MCU films had restarted following the writers' strike before they determined an appropriate tease for future projects. Esposito announced in July 2024 that he was portraying Seth Volker/Sidewinder, leader of the Serpent Society, and said he would return for additional reshoots in mid-November. Moore originally told Esposito that he would play King Cobra, and the actor enjoyed the notion of an African-American man being called King, but the filmmakers ultimately decided that he would portray Sidewinder instead, in part because Sidewinder is the founder of the Serpent Society in the comics. Some of King Cobra's characteristics from the comics were given to Sidewinder for the film. The remains of Tiamut the Celestial, whose emergence on Earth was halted by the Eternals in the MCU film Eternals, 2021, were also revealed to be a focus of the film's story, allowing the introduction of the fictional metal adamantium to the MCU. Moore said Marvel Studios had been waiting to address Tiamut's remains in a story that could make the best use of them. Onah said the prior Captain America films had been used to establish aspects of the MCU, and they felt it was interesting to introduce adamantium as a geopolitical football. The film originally ended with a climactic action scene on Tiamut's remains, referred to as Celestial Island, but this was reworked. A dogfight near the island featuring multiple countries was also simplified to just feature the United States and Japan. Onah originally filmed the sequence in a thriller-inspired style like other scenes, but they found the action needed more camera movement and intensity. Johannes Hawker Johannesson was revealed to be part of the cast in December, when Marvel credited the film's story to Spellman and Musson and Edwards, with the screenplay credited to Onah and Peter Glanz and Orton. The final writing credits were revealed the next month. Edwards received screenplay credit alongside Spellman and Musson and Onah and Glanz, with the story credited to the former three. Additional off-screen literary material was attributed to Orton. Also in January 2025, Rollins said he would no longer be appearing in the film following the reshoots. Salazar's scenes as Diamondback were also cut. Onah said the film was taking a swing with its depiction of the Serpent Society, and they felt this aspect needed to be refined to align better with the film's thriller tone. He said they decided to move away from the more comic-accurate versions of Serpent Society members portrayed by Rollins and Salazar, and the film's reshoot dates also clashed with a different project Salazar was working on. Both actors were replaced by Esposito, who serves the same purpose in the film's story but with a more grounded tone. Onah felt Esposito's inclusion was a no-brainer once he became available, and thought the actor brought the right level of gravitas to the film and the Serpent Society team, which is just called Serpent in the film. Johannesson plays another member of the group, Copperhead, alongside Esposito. Moore compared the group, described as a violent special ops team, to the more grounded version of the comic book character Batroc the Leaper that is introduced in The Winter Soldier portrayed by Georges St-Pierre. Onah said Esposito's role was great setup for further appearances of the Serpent Society in the MCU. Addressing public interest in the changes made to the film during reshoots, Onah said they were a natural part of the film's development, and he pushed back against speculation that came from leaks and reports that he said were inaccurate. An example of this was speculation that Ross was originally supposed to die in the film, based on set photos and early trailer footage showing a funeral scene that was cut from the film. Onah said there was never a version where he explicitly died, but there were versions of the film in which his fate was left unknown to the public. Onah added that Red Hulk is a fan-favorite character from the comics, and said it is not very easy for a Hulk to perish. Matthew Schmidt and Madeline Gavin edited the film. Schmidt previously worked on The Winter Soldier and Civil War. Brave New World is the first MCU film to not feature an animated Marvel Studios opening logo, instead presenting the studio's logo in no-nonsense black and white without a traditional musical fanfare. Bill Westenhofer was the film's initial visual effects supervisor, but left the project to work on the film Moana, 2026, and was replaced with Alessandro Ongaro. Visual effects were provided by Weta FX, Digital Domain, Luma Pictures, Barnstorm VFX, UPP, Opsis, and Outpost VFX. Digital Domain worked on the Celestial Island sequence. The same digital model for Tiamut from Eternals was used, but they scaled it down a little. Weta FX designed Red Hulk with mean writing. Weta visual effects supervisor Dan Cox said they did not want the character to just look like a color-swapped version of the Hulk. They hoped to make him more intimidating than the Hulk, with a more upright, athletic posture. Onah wanted the character to feel more tactical and methodical due to Ross's military background, and referenced a bear for poses where the character is on all fours. Ford's facial features were incorporated into the design based on scans of his face. The climactic confrontation between Red Hulk and Captain America in DC has more than 300 visual effects shots. Ford and a stunt double provided motion capture for the character. Ongaro said Ross's transformation into Red Hulk was originally meant to look more disgusting. You could see the skin tearing and breaking on his hand, bones popping off, but they decided to pull back on that aspect. They also planned to show the full transition from Red Hulk back to Ross, but Onah felt it broke the peacefulness of the moment and instead chose to focus on his shadow during the transition. For Stearns, who also features a monstrous look, Onah said they always intended to use visual effects to augment the practical effects that were used on set. Ongaro said the practical effects for Stearns were replaced with an all-computer-generated approach by Luma. Laura Karpman was announced as the film's composer in August 2024. She previously composed the music for the MCU series What If? 2021 to 2024, and Ms. Marvel, 2022, and the film The Marvels. Karpman wrote a new heroic theme that represents Wilson, Torres, and Bradley, and an Aaron Copland-inspired piano theme for Ross. The latter evolves into a Godzilla monster thing when Ross transforms into Red Hulk. The film's thriller aspects are scored with conspiracy music that Karpman compared to the Mission Impossible franchise. She also included a subtle reference to Alan Silvestri's Captain America march from the previous films. Nora Kroll Rosenbaum, who worked with Karpman on What If, provided additional music for the film. A soundtrack album featuring their music was released by Hollywood Records and Marvel Music on February 12, 2025. At that time, Mackie said the film's title song had been provided by Kendrick Lamar, which was interpreted by some as Lamar having written a new song for the film. However, it is his 2014 song I that is played over the film's end credits. Additionally, the 1959 song Mr. Blue by the Fleetwoods is heard throughout the film as a trigger for characters being mind-controlled by Stearns. This is a reference to his Mr. Blue alias in The Incredible Hulk. Feige and Mackie revealed the first footage from the film, focusing on Wilson meeting with Thaddeus Ross, at Cinemacon in April 2024. The following month, McDonald's began selling Happy Meals with toys based on characters from the film, including Red Hulk and Diamondback. Stephanie Calloy at The Wrap noted that these characters had not been confirmed for the film by Marvel at that time, and the early reveal was likely due to the film's release being delayed but the marketing partnership with McDonald's not being pushed back to match. More footage from the film was shown at a Cine Europe panel in June teasing Disney's theatrical slate. A teaser trailer was released in July which drew comparisons to The Winter Soldier's tone, with Jennifer Ouellette of Ars Technica describing it as half superhero movie, half political thriller. The appearance of Red Hulk and the character's potential true identity were both widely discussed. Adam Chidwood at The Wrap wondered if rumors of Thaddeus Ross becoming Red Hulk were a red herring. The Verge's Charles Pouliam questioned if the film being a continuation of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier would be difficult for general audiences to follow. Conversely, Sandy Schaefer and Chris Evangelista from Slash Film felt the film would not rely much on the series to have wider audience appeal. They called the trailer pretty good considering the film's recently completed reshoots, noting that it largely contains action rather than plot details. Commentators also noted the reveal that the remains of Tiamut would be featured in the film, after the emergence had largely been ignored in MCU projects since Eternals. Michael McWherter at Polygon noted that the trailer shows the United States and other countries meeting at a global unity summit to discuss the Celestial, with a stylized version of Tiamut's hand being used as a logo for the summit. Later in July, Marvel released an updated version of the teaser for distribution in theaters that removed Isaiah Bradley's assassination attempt on Thaddeus Ross. This came following the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Pennsylvania that month. Also in July 2024, Feige and members of the cast promoted the film at San Diego Comic-Con. More footage was shown, Esposito's role was announced, and Thaddeus Ross was confirmed to be the character who transforms into Red Hulk. Similar footage was also shown at the 2024 D23 Expo. Following online leaks of the San Diego Comic-Con and D23 footage, Marvel released an official look at Red Hulk within their video celebrating the company's 85th anniversary in August. A full trailer for the film debuted at D23 Brazil in November and was also released online. After the teases of Red Hulk in previously released footage, the trailer features Ross's transformation into Red Hulk and shots of the character fighting Wilson. Several commentators noted the trailer's unique style, featuring creepy black lines, split-screen shots, and a flickering text effect. Comparisons were drawn to political thriller films such as The Day of the Jackal, The Parallax View, and All the President's Men, as well as The Candidate, 1972, JFK, 1991, and The Constant Gardener, 2005. Jordan King at Empire questioned whether Brave New World would live up to these comparisons, but said it was a promising sign that the film was looking to place itself in conversation with those previous films. Marvel Studios partnered with Tide's Collateral Stains promotional campaign to release a series of commercials for the film in January 2025. These feature Greg Turkington reprising his role of Baskin-Robbins store manager Dale from the MCU films Ant-Man, 2015, and Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, 2023. For the 3 weeks leading up to the film's premiere, Disney was said to be making a final and biggest marketing push for it. At a press event in Italy at the end of January, Mackie said Captain America represented values like honor, dignity and integrity rather than America itself. He received backlash from some online commenters who labeled the film anti-American and woke. Mackie soon added, "I'm a proud American and taking on the shield of a hero like Cap is the honor of a lifetime. Cap has universal characteristics that people all over the world can relate to." James Hibbard of The Hollywood Reporter said Evans made similar statements when playing the character, and the actors were likely directed by Marvel to focus on Captain America's universal qualities to avoid any jingoistic connotations while promoting internationally. Hibbard also discussed the film's other controversies: similarities between Thaddeus Ross and the newly re-elected President Donald Trump, the original New World Order subtitle, opposing views on the inclusion and portrayal of Ruth Bat Seraph, and ugly criticisms related to Mackie being black, but said these did not appear to have impacted the film's box office performance based on early projections. Coinciding with the film's release in February, concept art by Maynarding of the film's Captain America costume and design for Red Hulk were used as variant covers for Marvel Comics' Sam Wilson, Captain America #2 and Red Hulk #1. Captain America, Brave New World premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood, Los Angeles, on February 11, 2025, and was released in the United States on February 14 in IMAX. The film was previously scheduled for May 3, 2024, and then July 26, 2024, before it was pushed to the February 2025 release date following the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike. It is part of Phase 5 of the MCU. Captain America, Brave New World was released for digital download on April 15, 2025, and was released on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on May 13. The home media releases include deleted scenes, a gag reel, and featurettes. The film was released on Disney Plus on May 28. In the United Kingdom, Captain America: Brave New World debuted at number 2 on the official film chart for the week ending April 23, then moved to third place the following week. It later reached number 1 for the week ending May 21, becoming the top-selling home entertainment release. In the United States, following its PVOD release, Captain America: Brave New World topped the Fandango at Home digital chart for the week ending April 20, which ranks titles based on revenue from premium digital rentals and sales. It also secured the number 2 position on Amazon Prime Video's digital charts on April 22. The film later ranked second on Fandango at Home's top 10 titles for the week ending April 27, before moving to third place for the week ending May 4. On physical media, Captain America: Brave New World debuted at number 1 on the Circana Videoscan combined DVD and Blu-ray sales chart, as well as on the dedicated Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD charts, for the week ended May 17. High-definition formats accounted for 71% of first-week sales, with 32% from regular Blu-ray and 39% from 4K Ultra HD editions. It moved to number 2 on both the combined DVD and Blu-ray chart and the dedicated Blu-ray chart for the week ended May 31, after spending 2 weeks at number 1, while remaining the top-selling title on the 4K Ultra HD chart. Through October 2025, Captain America: Brave New World ranked 5th in year-to-date disc sales on Circana's Videoscan chart. For the year, Captain America: Brave New World placed 9th on the top-selling titles on disc, DVD and Blu-ray combined, of 2025, according to Circana Videoscan. It recorded a sales index of 37.24 relative to the year's top-selling title. Blu-ray formats accounted for 61% of total unit sales, including a 28% share from 4K Ultra HD. The film also ranked 8th on the top-selling Blu-ray discs of 2025 and 12th on the top-selling 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays of 2025. Analytics company Samba TV, which gathers viewership data from certain smart TVs and content providers, announced that Captain America: Brave New World was the second most streamed film and the 8th most streamed title overall in the United States between May 26 to June 1. Just Watch, a guide to streaming content with access to data from more than 45 million users around the world, reported that it was the 5th most streamed film in the country during the same period. Nielsen Media Research, which records streaming viewership on certain U.S. television screens, announced that Captain America: Brave New World was streamed for 750 million minutes from May 26 to June 1. It was the most streamed film in the country during that week. In the following week, from June 2 to 8, the film recorded 304 million minutes of watch time, making it the 6th most streamed film for that period. Captain America: Brave New World grossed $200.5 million in the United States and Canada, and $214.6 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $415.1 million. Deadline Hollywood reported that the film needed to earn $425 million worldwide to break even, taking into account the reported production budget of $180 million as well as marketing costs. Feige attributed the film's low box office performance to the absence of Steve Rogers' actor Chris Evans, who had headlined the 3 previous Captain America films. In the United States and Canada, the film was released alongside Paddington in Peru and was projected to gross $80 to $94 million from 4,105 theaters in its 4-day opening weekend. Tracking service Quorum reported early box office estimates for the film in mid-January 2025, projecting that it would earn $86 to $95 million during its opening weekend and more than $100 million across the 4-day weekend from Valentine's Day to President's Day. This was similar to the Winter Soldier's $95 million opening weekend in 2014. Further tracking, reported later in January, similarly indicated an opening of at least $90 million. The film grossed $40 million on its opening day, including an estimated $12 million from Thursday previews. It debuted to $88.8 million, and a total of $100 million over the 4-day frame, topping the box office. In its second weekend, it retained the top spot at the box office and grossed $28.2 million, a 68% drop that ranked as the third worst for the MCU after The Marvels, 78%, and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, 70%. The film made $14.9 million in its third weekend, remaining atop the box office, before being dethroned in its fourth by newcomer Mackie 17. Outside the United States and Canada, the film grossed $92.4 million from 52 overseas markets in its opening weekend. The top 5 international markets were China, $10.5 million, the UK, $8.5 million, Mexico, $6.6 million, Korea, $5.6 million, and France, $4.7 million. Captain America: Brave New World received mixed reviews from critics, who were divided on the film's story, connections to other MCU projects, and visual effects. The overall reception was also described as unfavorable, negative, and mixed to negative. The performances, particularly those of Mackie and Ford, received praise. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, 46% of 367 critics gave Brave New World a positive review, with an average rating of 5.4/10. The critics' consensus reads, "Anthony Mackie capably takes up Cap's mantle and shield, but Brave New World is too routine and overstuffed with uninteresting Easter eggs to feel like a worthy standalone adventure for this new Avengers leader." Metacritic summarized the critical response as mixed or average, based on a weighted average score of 42 out of 100 from 56 critics. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B, on an A+ to F scale, the lowest grade for an MCU film to date, and Post-Track reported a mixed bag average rating of 3 stars out of 5. The political subject matter was a subject of critical commentary. Frank Sheck at The Hollywood Reporter remarked that the scene where Ross transformed into Red Hulk and caused havoc across Washington, D.C. seemed like a fantasy of real-world United States President Donald Trump. David Ehrlich of IndieWire agreed with parallels between Ross and Trump's Make America Great Again rhetoric, citing both being gruff old men elevated to office based on the promise of facilitating unity based on dealing with an alien threat. The Independent's Adam White said that while Ross/Red Hulk could be interpreted as a Trump pastiche, this was ultimately unlikely as the film refused to establish a political stance, with subplots regarding politics remaining underused. Rolling Stone's David Fear joked that Ross was somehow still only the second most destructive, rage-filled commander-in-chief to ever hold office, and Entertainment Weekly writer Maureen Lee Lenker joked that the most unbelievable part is a US president with empathy, a sense of responsibility for his actions, and a capacity for change. Brandon Yu of the New York Times wrote that the only wisps of tangible political intrigue to be found were either unintended, or from allusions to previous subject matter in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Other commentary concerned the controversial Bat Seraph character, with P.J. Grissar at the forward writing that the controversy about the character relating to Israel and Gaza did not matter because the film overall was honestly such a dog's breakfast in terms of politics and presentation, while Film's Devin Meenan opined that the character's debut could not have been timed more poorly because of the divisiveness of public opinion inherent in the ongoing conflict. The characterization and narrative were criticized. Molly Freeman, writing for Screen Rant, claimed that the only purpose of Sam's suit switch from white to blue was to sell more toys, pointing this out as an example of the film featuring elements without flair nor concern for furthering its story or characters. You likewise wrote that it amounted to the genre of the action figure commercial. Vulture's Bill Jebari wrote that the film marked Marvel's turn into a giant slop machine, opining that the film's bid to create sincerity came off as phony and that the jokes to cut this up were lame, while Sheck agreed that humor was in severely short supply and that Mackie's reliable charisma was lacking. The Rap's William Bibiani wrote that the film was unoriginal and without emotional depth, even in the few moments where Wilson made an emotional connection to the film, as these moments only rehashed the plot of Falcon and the Winter Soldier briefly and without impact. It said that Brave New World's steadfast refusal to engage with its own ideas, either by artistic design or corporate mandate, reeks of timidity. Writing for RogerEbert.com, Robert Daniels said Wilson was turned into the magical Negro for the film, and that in an effort to soothe white America's anger and hurt, the film also asks its hero to grin and figuratively tap dance off-screen. Collider's Aidan Kelly said the dialogue was among the worst present in the whole of the MCU, and criticized the boringness of Wilson, Sidewinder, and Bat Seraph, though it praised Ford's empathy. They pointed out the non-cohesive nature of the film, mentioning the reshoots the film underwent as resulting in this. In agreement on the topic of Ford, Lee said Ford was the main attraction, lauding his gravitas and twinkle in his eye and a merry warmth. White called the character development an afterthought, feeling Mackie had little to play with emotionally, and criticized his relegation to a functional, blandly heroic punching machine despite his acting talent. The Wall Street Journal's Kyle Smith said that the film is competently executed, without resorting to played-out gimmickry such as skipping across the multiverse, adding that it gives the audience plenty of analogues for real-world problems. He also wrote that the MCU draws on the Manchurian Candidate to produce one of its better recent movies, while Katie Walsh of the Los Angeles Times described the film as a decent political thriller with something culturally resonant to say that exceeds mere comic book particulars. Critics were polarized on the visuals. For the New York Post, Johnny Oleksinski felt that the animation of the White House fight scene was so cheap and cheesy that it was unable to be taken seriously, and the reveal of the mutated Stearns caused a hearty guffaw because of the poor makeup and prosthetics. Kelly wrote that the CGI in the film was worse than The Incredible Hulk, 2008, released nearly 2 decades earlier, and concluded it was unconvincing. Eberai wrote that the VFX-heavy sequences are so lifeless and tiresome that I felt my eyes drifting closed a couple of times. Daniels and Freeman both praised the VFX on Red Hulk, though Freeman felt the cherry blossoms were a green screen mess. You wrote that the visuals were garish and slapdash, while Bibiani called the visuals drab and unfinished, criticizing Wilson's CGI wings as a proof of concept that proves nothing. They wrote that the film looks so clean it looks completely fake. Sheck wrote the CGI was underwhelming and at other times even worse, but were amused from recognizing Ford's features in Red Hulk. Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 3 of 4 stars and called it a far better work than recent missteps. Talk about conflicted. That's how I found myself when forming expectations for Captain America, Brave New World. On one hand, Steve Rogers was my favorite Marvel superhero as a kid. And the 3 previous Captain America films have been among my very favorite movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. On the other hand, Steve Rogers is now gone from the MCU. And while I like the Falcon character, his messy streaming series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier didn't start Sam's journey as the new Cap on the right foot. Captain America, Brave New World is the 35th movie in the MCU and follows on the heels of the Disney Plus streaming series. It's helmed by Julius Onah, The Cloverfield Paradox, who co-wrote the screenplay with the team of Rob Edwards, Malcolm Spellman, Dallin Musson, and Peter Glanz. While my hopes were it would fall somewhere closer to the 3 Cap films, in many ways Brave New World feels like an extension of the series, which isn't the biggest compliment. But in fairness, Brave New World is considerably better than its streaming predecessor. It makes an effort to maintain the more grounded and realistic vibe of the other Cap films in both its storytelling and filmmaking. And it plays on a much bigger scope and scale than the series. Yet there's something missing from the very start. And no matter how hard it tries, Brave New World can't capture what made the earlier features special. Anthony Mackie reprises his role as Sam Wilson, formerly known as Falcon and the best friend of the now retired Steve Rogers. After being passed the shield, he stands as the new Captain America. By his side is his pal Joaquin Torres, Danny Ramirez, who has essentially taken the mantle of Falcon for no bigger reason than to give Sam a sidekick similar to what he was to Steve in the previous MCU movies. The story opens in Mexico where Sam and Joaquin stops an illegal black market sale of adamantium, yep, the metal alloy that make up Wolverine's skeleton and claws. As a reward for his good work, Sam takes Joaquin to Baltimore to meet and train with the legendary Isaiah Bradley, Carl Lumbly, a former super soldier and mentor to Sam. Meanwhile, President-elect Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, Harrison Ford taking over for the late William Hurt, is working hard to convince the American people that he is a changed man following the events of 2008's The Incredible Hulk. Clearly enough, people believed he had changed to vote for him. But some remain unconvinced, including his estranged daughter Betty, previously played by Liv Tyler, who hasn't spoken to him in years. Ross believes his success hinges on a proposed treaty between the United States and other countries over control of the recently discovered adamantium. He invites Sam, Joaquin, and Isaiah to the White House as envoys while he addresses the leaders of the other nations about the importance of the treaty. But suddenly Isaiah and 4 other men pull weapons and attempt to kill President Ross. The assassination attempt is thwarted and a disoriented and confused Isaiah is arrested. From there things escalate at a near comical rate. A determined Sam sets out to get to the bottom of what happened, starting with exonerating Isaiah. His investigation immediately puts him at odds with Ross. But we quickly learn that someone else is pulling the strings. And both Sam and Ross are important parts of the secret puppet master's grand plan. As it plays out, politics, espionage, grand conspiracies, and geopolitical tensions all play into the story, but not always in a coherent or logical way. As for the characters, Sam and Ross are the only ones who leave an impression. Joaquin is fine but is mostly a tag-along. Isaiah is easily the most emotionally involving but only has a small part. The always great Giancarlo Esposito is wasted as the villainous yet poorly developed sidewinder who's basically just a cog that the story needs on occasions. Shira Haas is unable to make the president's chief of security Ruth Bat Seraph anything more than a one-note Black Widow knockoff. And Tim Blake Nelson appears in one of the more compelling roles, yet one restricted by some shaky material. Brave New World has plenty of serviceable action, though nothing that will get your blood pumping. And its set pieces are decent but hardly what you would call inspired. As far as Mackie, he certainly gives it his all. But despite having the physicality and commitment, he can't quite carry the movie in the way it needs him to. It all leads to a glaringly average MCU installment that does nothing to bring back the big event feel that every MCU movie once had. Captain America: Brave New World opens in theaters February 14th. Many people have condemned this movie before it's even out, mostly due to a lot of the behind-the-scenes stories regarding reshoots and poor test screenings. Admittedly, the trailers weren't particularly exciting, but it will be interesting to see the box office for Captain America: Brave New World. From what I hear, it's looking to make $190 million worldwide in its opening few days, which doesn't sound bad to me. Brave New World can stand on its own, however. If you've seen The Incredible Hulk starring Edward Norton, Eternals, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, then that will help, as there are references to them in this movie. You'll still be able to figure out what's going on, as this is hardly rocket science. The main selling point for me was seeing Harrison Ford as Red Hulk, and this is also the first semi-sequel to The Incredible Hulk, which I never hated the way many others do. Chris Evans is a tough act to follow as Cap, but Anthony Mackie isn't trying to copy him, and the whole point of this movie is how he can step out from Steve Rogers' shadow and prove himself worthy as the new Captain America. Sam Wilson, Mackie, is a good man and a true hero, wanting to do what's best for his country as well as his friends. He's had a rocky relationship with now POTUS Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, Harrison Ford, but the two try to work together to find out who is responsible for a recent assassination attempt on the president. Ford is perfectly cast as the gruff Ross, who has done questionable things in the past, but he also makes a few decisions which are reminiscent of real life too. He's certainly not the same character from Air Force One. I won't say anything else about the story as I don't want to spoil anything, But I can talk about the action, and that's where this film shines. There are multiple hand-to-hand combat scenes, giving this a grittier feel than more recent MCU films. It isn't quite up there with The Winter Soldier, which is arguably still my favorite Marvel film, but it certainly has its moments. It's also just nice to see an action movie with a sense of scale, with real explosions and shootouts mixed in with some visual effects too. One of my favorite characters is Sidewinder, played by the always fantastic Giancarlo Esposito. He's a genuinely threatening villain who isn't afraid to hurt innocents to get what he wants. He is unfortunately only a supporting character and doesn't have that big a role, which is a shame. I don't want to mention the real villain for spoilery reasons, but I didn't love their look, which was just ridiculous. Red Hulk is only really in 15 minutes of the movie, so don't expect a huge part there, but it's definitely one of the highlights. I really miss memorable movie themes, and it's been a while since the MCU had a decent music score, and sadly Brave New World isn't much better. It has some dramatic choirs at times, but there is no leitmotif to whistle along with, making it forgettable and bland. The film also has a rather dull visual style to it, which plagues so many modern movies, making it a little lifeless looking. Overall, Captain America: Brave New World is an entertaining entry in the MCU and was far better than I'd expected. Anthony Mackie makes Sam Wilson a likable everyman with a good heart, having to work with people who are lesser men. Harrison Ford nearly steals the show as Thaddeus Ross, who is more layered and interesting than you'd expect, adding some heart to the story. There are plenty of well-choreographed fight scenes and a sense of spectacle we haven't seen for a while. It's not perfect, but it's still the best MCU film in years. I consider myself an MCU fan, although my interest over the last year has waned. Whether it's superhero fatigue or saltiness over not seeing things on the big screen, keeping up with the world felt like a bit of a chore in 2024. So I went into Captain America: Brave New World without any prep. I don't even think I watched the full trailer for the film, but of course, I saw snippets about a certain angry red character. There were certainly no rewatches, and if you have listened to the Cosmic Circle podcast, you'll note that's exceedingly rare. I wasn't sure what to expect, and based on some of the early review chatter, had concerns I would be totally lost and hate it. I'm happy to say that that wasn't the case with Captain America: Brave New World. If you're a casual Marvel fan, you won't be lost with the multitude of characters and points from other stories. Director Julius Onah did a pretty good job of helping to show why Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson is a hero. As if all the other Avengers movies didn't do that already. It's got all the tension of a believable political conspiracy thriller, has some really interesting and exciting action, and has some excellent Marvel-sized visuals that look great. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but it is fun and even thought-provoking at times, and maybe that's enough. I wasn't disappointed at spending the time in the theater to watch. This film has plenty of Easter eggs and deep cuts for Marvel fans. Without spoiling the exact details on how this movie handles the island-sized celestial problem from the Eternals in a way that really makes sense for the type of political thriller this movie is. For those who like to piece together the puzzle of what's coming next in the MCU, Captain America: Brave New World plants several tantalizing seeds of probabilities. I'm excited for what's to come, and with Thunderbolts** and the Fantastic Four first steps on the horizon over the next few months, that's a good thing for Marvel. Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson has been Captain America for some time. He's settled into the role and has a cool Air Force-sponsored headquarters, but still has a ton of lingering baggage over the weight of the shield and how to keep people safe. While the Avengers, the Blip, and the Celestial in the ocean are all old news timeline-wise, the world is still dealing with the fallout. We enter into this movie with a new American president and a dicey diplomatic situation. We jump into the action with Cap fairly early in the film. The military puts him on a special mission that we learn later on, entangles Cap and the people that matter to him into an international incident. Wilson doesn't waste any time jumping into action that unfolds throughout the course of the film. This movie surprised me with some of the acting. I've really enjoyed Anthony Mackie's filmography, Marvel and non-Marvel alike. He's at his best in Brave New World when he's fighting bad guys, playing up the buddy vibes with Danny Ramirez, or working with Carl Lumbly as Isaiah Bradley. But as an aside, any time Lumbly is on screen is awesome. As an audience member, Mackie's portrayal of Captain America and Sam Wilson makes me believe in the good of the character. He embodies the morality that goes with the shield. I go into more detail further along in this review, but I wish the script and story had given him more to work with when Sam is in the midst of his self-doubt. Mackie is super talented, and I wish there had been more quiet moments to see his talent really shine. Who most surprised me was Harrison Ford, and in a good way. But of course, he's Harrison Ford, and maybe I shouldn't have been surprised even if it's just a comic book movie. As Thaddeus Ross, Ford brings a fascinating complexity to the role. From an almost earnest politician, who has made a grand turnaround from his more explosive anti-enhanced individual's days, to a man struggling with secrets, legacy, and a desire to do good, Ford plays the role with skill. Because he's such a good actor, you're sympathetic to him and the complicated world he's in. He helps make this feel grounded as a political thriller. He's totally at ease playing a character who is struggling in a world of lies. It makes me so want to rewatch his Jack Ryan films. There are a few villains in the film of varying degrees of importance to the central plot. Giancarlo Esposito is Sidewinder, appropriately menacing from Serpent. He had a very badass fight scene at a junkyard with Cap, but wasn't on screen nearly enough. Since there was so much going on with Brave New World, there wasn't room in the story to explore all that made him tick. Tim Blake Nelson returns as Sam Stearns. He first made his debut as the brainy scientist in 2008's The Incredible Hulk. Since that time, the character has been through some things, and over the course of the movie, we learn why he's got a grudge. Nelson's performance reminded me strongly of Tom Cavanagh in the Flash TV series. There's no way around the fact that this movie has a script and a story that has multiple credited writers. But although many hands have worked to make the Captain America, Brave New World vision a reality, it doesn't feel completely piecemeal or disjointed. It doesn't have the same death by notes feel that Sony's Madam Web did. Are there moments where you can kind of tell that there were reshoots? Sure. But there's still something there at the heart of Brave New World that works as a superhero film. There's a surprising bit of realism and humanity. Despite having a human man in a fancy mechanical bird suit face down against an angry red beast and what can best be described as a smaller and brainy version of the Green Giant, it doesn't feel cheesy. These are fully fleshed out characters we're spending time with. They aren't copy and paste or 2D people. And the characters help sell me on these personal and political conspiracies and complicated games with world governments. But while the tone of other Marvel projects set in the same political headspace have just left me unsettled, Brave New World leaves me with a kernel of optimism. As far as things that Captain America, Brave New World could have done better, there were a few moments in the middle of its 1 hour and 58-minute runtime that it dragged, and I found myself zoning out. Although I think Ford did a fantastic job with his character and what he brought to bear with his acting, the movie might have benefited from less time on Ross. But I guess when you have Harrison Ford on deck, you're going to use him all that you can. I also wish that the film was more daring with its messaging. As with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the relationship with Isaiah Bradley is explored, but there's not nearly enough time spent with the excellent Carl Lumbly. It's not until one of the final scenes of the movie, in an emotional moment between Wilson and Joaquin Torres, that the weight of what it means to be Cap, again, one of the big messages of the film that is touched upon with Bradley, really crystallizes, although there's another moment earlier with a surprise Marvel pop-in that sets it up. Without spoiling who the Marvel pop-in was, that particular late scene in the movie felt unnecessary. It was the only time my theater audibly reacted to what they were seeing, but it was also kind of boring, and the back and forth between the two characters in question lacked charm. Which is sad because both involved are fantastic. This scene felt like the Marvel powers that be were just checking a box. What it all boils down to, with the acting and the messaging, is that a really great movie was just there, out of reach. Again, the movie isn't a waste of time and is fun. It's just short of being great that, as an audience member, it's super frustrating in the end. Captain America, Brave New World is a solid superhero movie. It might not be at the top of any MCU ranking lists, but it's an entertaining, if a little long time at the movies. Anthony Mackie does a great job as Captain America with the material in the story that he has to work with, and I'm excited to see more of the character in the future. And of course, we will, because Captain America will return. Like its prequel television series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the newest MCU film, Captain America, Brave New World, hopes to explain why a black man would want to represent a country that has so rarely protected people who look like him. From the beginning, Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, now Captain America, trusts the sanctity of the US government. But why does Wilson want to be part of the system? Why does he grin and bear it in the face of people who so clearly despise him? Is representation alone really the balm for a broken country? To fully approach these questions, the MCU would need to be something it's not: radical. Instead, this film series wants normalcy, to be everything for everybody. That misbegotten desire brings down Wilson and makes this latest installment in cinema's longest-running soap opera its most out of touch yet. Captain America, Brave New World was never going to be a revolutionary text. But considering The Falcon and the Winter Soldier at least made allusions to the Tuskegee experiments, the exploitation of black bodies, and the prison industrial complex, there was some optimism this film would tie those threads together for a vibrant contemporary fabric. Instead, Brave New World clumsily wraps distant political themes around misshapen action set pieces for a film whose want to entertain overpowers any narrative coherence. These heroes stand for nothing, and as such crumble before our eyes as they try to safeguard a milquetoast future born out of a buried fascist past. Brave New World is the relic of a post-racial dream, built with respectability tools that have been not only ineffectual but self-destructive. Many will say they don't come to the MCU for politics, but director Julius Onah's film doesn't merely invite such conversation, it purposely prompts it. Brave New World begins with newly elected President Thaddeus Ross, Harrison Ford, inviting Wilson for a White House reception. Not only does Wilson appear, but he also brings his sidekick, Joaquin Torres, Danny Ramirez, aka the new Falcon, with him. He even talks the forgotten Captain Isaiah Bradley, Carl Lumbly, who's still angry at America's decades-long experimentation on him, into coming with them. Ross has two goals for the night: he wants Wilson to remake the Avengers, and he is aiming to broker a multinational treaty with Japan built on the discovery of adamantium on Celestial Island, the part of the world where a godlike alien's body has remained half-hatched since Eternals but never commented upon. The celebratory night, however, takes a turn when the dulcet chimes of the Fleetwood's Mr. Blue causes a mind-controlled Bradley to go full Manchurian Candidate by attempting to assassinate Ross. With Bradley now imprisoned, Wilson works to clear his friend's name before the system psychologically and physically kills him. You'd think the wrongful imprisonment of Bradley would spark some internal conflict within Wilson about his continual support of an anti-black system. But it's quite the opposite. He works to uphold the government by arguing in favor of a supposed implicit good within Ross, whose estrangement from his daughter Betty, Liv Tyler, following his hunting of the Hulk inspires the authoritarian politician to reach for peace. Ross and Wilson's shared hope for harmony is interrupted by Samuel Stearns, Tim Blake Nelson, reprising his The Incredible Hulk role, a scientist with an axe to grind against Ross. Stearns isn't much of a villain. You could pretty much replace him with a fern, and it wouldn't drastically change much. He lacks viciousness, depth, and a personality. His nonplussed presence, given little added weight by the prickly score, causes an already inert film to drag. Seriously, no MCU movie has felt as long as Brave New World. Half the story is Wilson and Torres, with the aid of Ross' chief of security, an Israeli former Black Widow named Ruth Bat Saraf, Shira Haas, going through the motions of an investigation that quickly loses steam and offers few laughs. The only saving grace of Onah's film is the intermittently sturdy, well-crafted action. Onah actually likes seeing limber, muscular bodies moving through space, appreciating the palpability of the human form. An opening fight in Mexico between Serpent leader Sidewinder, Giancarlo Esposito, and Wilson, for instance, flourishes through a bevy of full shots that allow viewers to feel each bruising punch. Unlike the flat photography of previous Marvel films, in this opening sequence, Onah and his DP Kramer Morgenthau at least allow for evocative shadows to carve their actors' faces. A game Esposito is a major beneficiary of this aesthetic approach. He's the one person in this film who holds the necessary spark to light up the screen. Unfortunately for Esposito, the filmmaker abandons that visual language during another one of the actors' scenes, a brawl in a junkyard. The sludgy, colorless photography returns with a vengeance here, doing neither Esposito nor Mackie any favors. The final half hour of Brave New World is equally tedious, zeroing in on the personal pains and latent rage within Ross. Ford tries to conjure some magic. He is still capable of uniquely granting dark villainous figures an edge of humanity, but is mostly saddled with cliched dialogue. Considering Ford's all-American screen persona, you'd think Onah would mine his stars past, Patriot Games or even Air Force One, to swerve audience expectations. Instead, Ford's inclusion becomes an unforgivable missed opportunity. The only burst of excitement they grant him comes when he transforms into Red Hulk. The VFX here are actually pretty stellar. His fiery, all-out rampage which Wilson wrestles to stop is chock full of symbolism representing a burning country, a fractured White House, and a government anguished by its role as the world police. The metaphors here aren't loud, they're screaming, making Brave New World less a chance at escapist entertainment and one preoccupied with its own sense of self-importance. The entire franchise's inability to balance substance with pleasure crashes into its inept conclusion. In fact, I'm not sure I've hated an ending to a movie more in recent memory than this one. For the purposes of this review, I will not spoil it. But let's just say this film imagines it's living in a different country, nay a different world, than the reality many have experienced. It argues for unearned forgiveness while making rushed, last-second nods to the weight of black excellence, the fight to gain a seat at the table, and the importance of representation. It not only turns its hero into a magical Negro. In an effort to soothe white America's anger and hurt, it also asks its hero to grin and figuratively tap dance off-screen. Even as Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly anthem a choice meant to elicit joy, adds a declarative note, you can't help but feel icky. This is our Black Captain America? This is our piece of the pie? This movie is anything but brave. It is the most feckless, spineless blockbuster of the last decade, a film in need of burning down the old world before daring to look for the new. There are some films where you walk in with a healthy amount of trepidation, and for me, this was one of them. The Captain America films were always one of the highlights of the MCU for me, with Captain America, the First Avenger, Captain America, the Winter Soldier and Captain America, Civil War all scoring high on my best of MCU lists. I even enjoyed the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, even if it was a bit uneven. But something about the production just felt off, and the need to drop the red hand into every trailer made it feel like they didn't have much else to go with. Having watched it now, I think this was both a fair and, luckily, unfair suggestion. So, to set the scene, it has been several years since Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, took over the mantle of Captain America, and while things have been going well, they are about to be tested with the election of Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, Harrison Ford, to United States President. We open in as Cap flies a mission in Mexico, recapturing a container captured by mercenaries led by Sidewinder, Giancarlo Esposito. The mission was a success, and Sam, Joaquin Torres, Danny Ramirez, and Isaiah Bradley, Carl Lumbly, were invited to the White House to see the Celestial Island Treaty be signed. It was a perfect night right up until Isaiah stood up and tried to kill the president. Chaos erupts, and suddenly, the world is on the brink of war. While there are many issues with this film, the cast is not one of them. In fact, they are the true highlight of the film. When Anthony, Danny, and Carl are all together, the film takes on a joyous feel, and you are here for all their banter. Tim Blake Nelson makes for a compelling villain whose visual design entirely matches his demeanor. While Giancarlo Esposito feels like he was shoved in after the primary production was finished, he still owns every scene he is in. The big surprise for me was Shira Haas as Ruth Batsaroff, who very much captured that feeling of a cat you don't want to upset because they will wreck you. Also, while Harrison Ford is not hitting his shrinking level here, he did make for a credible Thaddeus Ross. On that front, the action scenes are all quite good. You can feel an attempt in places to go back to the stylings of the Winter Soldier, and there are moments where they do get close. While narratively, they feel quite forced. Every battle scene with Anthony Mackie and Giancarlo Esposito was fun to watch. Indeed, the whole opening sequence in Mexico was a blast, and the battle in the White House captured that complete chaos when the threat was your own people. I would have liked to see Sam Wilson and Joaquin Torres interact more in these scenes other than talking over the radio, but it still all worked. All the visual effects also work together in these moments, so it's a blast to see Cap cut through a jet with his wings. However, while the action and casting save this film, you cannot help but feel that there were serious problems under the hood that were being held together with duct tape and a prayer. Narratively, this film is a mess, which you could tell even before it became clear in the credits how many rewrites there were. So much of the dialogue just falls flat because there is no heart to it. It had such a boilerplate nothingness to it. The cast is bringing these moments to life, but you can tell in places that they have to throw everything at it because they are being given nothing to work with. This also leads to some awkward structural issues where all the seams don't quite fit together. Tonally, they are aiming for a brooding political thriller like Winter Soldier, and while they are dancing in that area, it is clear they didn't quite hit the mark. This leads us to the central plot device of this film. I am glad that someone is finally dealing with the celestial that popped out of the earth in the Eternals, which was, checks notes, all the way back in 2021. Also, fine, this is how we get adamantium, sure, okay. However, the countries fighting over the islands are France, America, Japan, and India, and that makes no geopolitical sense in any shape or form. I get it for business reasons or just not wanting to add to the fire that is China-US relations now that you didn't want to pit them as the bad guys. However, only China and America can forward project in that region to the extent that they could be land grabbing over other Indian Ocean powers. I say this because that narrative dissonance always impacts the film, and heck, even the Eternals name dropped better candidates like Australia. It is like they wanted the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. and worked back from that. But that is a choice that works in only one market. Okay, maybe I am just annoyed because they still have not put the islands on a map. Seriously, they almost did it here but then they had to shoot the president. In the end, do we recommend Captain America, Brave New World? Look, it is not the worst film I have seen in the past year, or even in the MCU, which, given their spotty record recently, is good to see. While it is clear that it had a troubled production, at least it all came together in the end, sort of. But a rampaging Hulk does seem to smooth over several frayed surfaces. Have you watched Captain America, Brave New World? Let us know what you thought in the comments below. If you liked Captain America, Brave New World, we would recommend to you the Marvels. Captain America, Brave New World is the latest soft restart of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. After a rocky few years of superhero fatigue, waning interest, and some mediocre movies, the MCU pivots to rebuild with new storylines and characters, even a new Captain America, played by a winning Anthony Mackie, all hinting at exciting developments in the years ahead. With Deadpool and Wolverine, the MCU's transitional, and only, chapter in 2024, delivering a fun but airless time at the movies, It's back to world building in a different direction. But more than a stepping stone for what's to come, it's a plainly diverting solo adventure. Director Julius Onah and a posse of credited screenwriters draw on a similar throwback conspiracy template as Captain America, The Winter Soldier, 2014, one of the MCU's best and an obvious inspiration here. They also carefully navigate modest political themes without resorting to overt didacticism, offering a tense spy thriller scenario that accomplished the most basic ambition of a superhero movie. I was entertained. A competent filmmaker carrying out Marvel's vision, Onah cleverly prompted his audience to think about race, class, privilege, and power in his last directorial project, Loose, 2019. In Brave New World, some of those same ideas have been woven into the narrative and dialogue, albeit without much force, all while making it easy for this love-hate MCU viewer to lose himself in its engaging story. To be sure, I enjoy seeing new Marvel movies. They're fun mega-budget spectacles and, as I've written about before, my teen years collecting and reading comic books often makes me a more forgiving reviewer. But I deplore what they represent in Hollywood, how they've amplified the corporate mindset of studio executives and the industry as a whole. As a critic, I remain at odds, split between enjoying the movies and feeling cynical about their impact on commercial cinema. This feeling has intensified over the years as Marvel went from a scrappy company that crafted an unlikely hit with Iron Man, 2008, to the shiniest product off the Disney product assembly line. In any event, this refreshingly multiverse-free entry in the MCU feels grounded next to the last few years of intergalactic battles, quantum realms, and alternate dimensions. Although A Link to the Cosmic Eternals, 2021, introduces an exciting new element into this world, the comparatively grounded scenario involves more everyday threats, an international treaty for a new resource, a mad scientist, and brainwashed assassins worthy of the Manchurian Candidate, 1962. The story finds newly elected President Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, originally portrayed by the late William Hurt and now played by an excellent Harrison Ford, offering the new Captain America a chance to relaunch the Avengers team. After getting a promotion in the Disney Plus series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021, to Captain America, Sam Falcon Wilson doesn't have time to accept his offer before an assassination attempt on Ross. The problem is that one of the assassins is Wilson's friend, Carl Lumbly, a super soldier seemingly programmed by some mysterious figure working in the shadows. Sam and his soon-to-be Falcon sidekick, Joaquin Torres, Danny Ramirez, investigate and uncover an elaborate conspiracy with the help of Ross' top security agent, Ruth Batsarov, Shira Haas, a former Black Widow. Those involved include a mercenary named Sidewinder, Giancarlo Esposito, and the long-overdue return of Bruce Banner's friend Samuel Stearns, Tim Blake Nelson, last seen with his head getting all brainy and weird in The Incredible Hulk, 2008, a film that fans tend to dislike, but I'll gladly defend. The particulars are best left for you to discover. Meanwhile, Sam grapples with his status as a supersuited human who never took the super soldier serum as Steve Rogers did. What chance does he have of stopping the colossal forces at work such as Ross, a POTUS with a history of throwing superhumans in the raft and solving his problems with violence without superpowers? Then again, Ross has vowed to change, leaning on his Together campaign slogan, partly to win back his estranged daughter, Liv Tyler. Like Aldous Huxley's dystopian novel of the same name, minus the Captain America, of course, the movie warns against potential technological advancements and genetic tampering that threaten humanity. Huxley's prescient 1932 book, much like George Orwell's 1984, feels woefully relevant to this moment in the world and specifically recent American history. While it's somewhat disappointing that the movie doesn't draw more on Huxley's warnings against conformity, consumerism, and the loss of individuality which feel chillingly germane, it still manages to incorporate political allusions. After all, the story warns against a president who is on his own side. He always has been and runs a country known for taking whatever it wants by force. and Ross eventually becomes a figure whose uncontrolled emotions and selfish actions have destructive consequences. It's not hard-hitting commentary, but it's there, and that's something. Apart from a stylish long zoom to evoke the conspiracy movies of the 1970s, The Parallax View, 1974, The Conversation, 1974, and 3 Days of the Condor, 1975, the aesthetics of Captain America, Brave New World are competent but never inventive. As usual, VFX artists and green screen studios aid in much of the action, including a tense dogfight sequence over the Indian Ocean and a final battle in Washington, D.C. But there's also plenty of energetic, if plainly shot, hand-to-hand combat and acrobatics, the stakes of which seem higher given Sam's vulnerability. He's stabbed, shot, and left with broken bones, yet carries on like an invulnerable 80s action hero. The mercifully average 118-minute runtime means the movie doesn't overstay its welcome, though the spectacle is less compelling than the engrossing story and Onah's direction of his actors. Ford could have slept through this performance and merely cashed his check. Instead, he imbues Ross with humanity, regret, and rage, leading to several imposing speeches and emotional breakdowns. It's one of the best performances in any MCU movie. Though Onah may be a director for hire here, he enhances the material by recognizing that what brings these stories to life is the actors, not the CGI, spectacle, or mind-numbing battles, all of which look only slightly above the quality of an MCU series on Disney+. The heart of the story belongs to Mackie, whose Cap fights for Ross' message of togetherness more than the POTUS. If we can't see the good in each other, we've already lost the fight, he says, speaking to this moment in America with an evergreen sentiment. Mackie makes an affable, noble, inspirational Captain America, and the supporting cast enriches the character. Lumbly, Nelson, Haas, Esposito, and Ramirez all shine. And while Captain America, Brave New World is only political in MCU terms, which is mild at best, the blockbuster lends some relevance to this goes-down-smooth scenario, instilling hope for the MCU's future with an entertaining installment. Captain America, Brave New World is the first Marvel movie in 6 months, but more than that, it's the first since 2022, the year of Thor, Love and Thunder and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, to build itself around a superhero you'd categorize as Marvel classic. Those 3 years define an era when many began to wonder if comic book movie culture, or, at least, the thrill of it, was over. Last summer, the massive box office success of Deadpool and Wolverine, $636 million domestic, might seem to have laid that question to rest. Yet with the Marvel Cinematic Universe encompassing 35 films, there is now a daunting repetition built into it. The issue of potential superhero fatigue hovers over a new Captain America film far more than it did before. With so much backstory, including the Disney Plus miniseries The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021, now woven into the Avengers saga, Brave New World is a movie you may go into wondering if you've done enough homework. And watching Anthony Mackie launch his first solo flight as Sam Wilson, who has taken over the Captain American mantle from Chris Evans's Steve Rogers, you may be struck by how much the character now seems like a scaled-down superhero for an MCU whose glory days are behind it. Wilson's Captain America lacks the serum-enhanced invincibility that defined Rogers. He's a hand-to-hand combat badass, but far more dependent on his shield and wingsuit, both of which are made of vibranium. You could say that makes him a hero more comparable to, say, Iron Man, though Tony Stark's principal weapon was Robert Downey Jr.'s motor mouth, and Wilson's all-too-mortal quality comes through in the sly doggedness of Mackie's "when you renumber to you try harder" performance. But on a gut level we're thinking, wasn't the earlier Captain America more super? All that said, it's that very earthbound quality that roots Brave New World, a movie that takes its tone from Mackie's tough, taut, slightly downbeat cool cat presence. The film, while intricately connected to all that's come before, epic imprisonments, adamantium, Sebastian Stan, works well enough as a vigorous, prosaic, more standalone than not adventure that balances shield-bashing, sky-zipping action with the elements of a gritty geopolitical thriller. This isn't one of those Marvel movies that fans had begun to trash for getting swallowed up by CGI and strangled by too many multiverse tentacles to disentangle. It's superhero meatloaf and potatoes served with just enough competence and dash not to feel like reheated leftovers. Early on, Wilson is invited to the White House, where Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, the former Army general and newly elected U.S. President, played by Harrison Ford, taking over for the late William Hurt, is hosting the Celestial Island World Summit, which marks a major global discovery of a celestial mass in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Our tersely honorable hero and the sneaky, combustible Ross share a thorny past. Wilson is trying to mend old wounds by bringing along Isaiah Bradley, Carl Lumbly, his old comrade and a former super soldier who was imprisoned and experimented on for 30 years. At the White House, though, Isaiah suddenly rises up, along with 4 gunmen, to assassinate the president. They fail, but a look at the surveillance footage reveals that each assassin, including Isaiah, had a cell phone light shine in his face. They've been triggered by a mysterious entity, and Wilson, with Danny Ramirez's snark-light Falcon at his side, he's like Robin to Cap's Batman, sets out to find the culprit. The director, Julius Onah, The Cloverfield Paradox, unpacks the conspiracy with straightforward gusto. It all leads to Samuel Stern's, Tim Blake Nelson, a cellular biologist contaminated with the blood of Bruce Banner, which has turned him into a toxic green troll who wears his brains on the outside. If Stearns had hatched a good old Marvel master plan, like, trying to annihilate everyone in the multiverse, he'd just be a rerun. But he's actually got an entertainingly loopy idea, to goad President Ross, his former captor, into a military face-off with Japan over the ownership of a cache of adamantium. The trick is to tease out Ross's anger, his inner bully. We're used to seeing movie presidents who are stalwart ciphers, but Harrison Ford plays Ross like Ronald Reagan with anger management issues. He invests the character with a gravelly authority that keeps the lid, barely, on his simmering instability. We keep waiting for Ford's inner grump to bust out into rage, and his chameleonic performance keeps changing colors, until Ross transmogrifies into the Red Hulk, at which point the film launches into its conventional Marvel exciting climactic duel. I wouldn't call any of this topical, yet there are coincidental semi-resonances. Stern's mind control techniques embody the grand depersonalization of AI, hence the film's subtitle. And the way the old world order crumbles into a new world disorder connects, however tangentially, with the WTF tone of President Trump's attempt to remake global politics. As Ruth Batsarov, an Israeli former Black Widow who was a Mossad agent in the comics and is now the president's head of security, which hasn't stopped pro-Palestinian protesters from objecting to her presence, Shira Haas is like Billie Eilish playing Mata Hari. And Tim Blake Nelson gooses the camp dastardliness of a villain who's like the Phantom of the MCU. The post-credits teaser reveals that he's not done. Captain America, Brave New World feels like what it is, a pit stop in the MCU's rebooting the Avengers strategy. What's old is not new again. But it's just fun enough again. Sam Wilson has a bit of a history with Thaddeus Ross. Of course, Sam knows him as General Ross, a rather ruthless military man who would step on any neck to get what he wanted, not as President Ross. So, seeing Ross in that newly elected position is, well, unexpected. As was Ross' personal request for Sam to slip into his vibranium-laced Captain America suit to take on an important mission. However, since the signing of the Sokovia Accords, Sam's Captain America is one of the only superheroes the government can call upon. So Sam Wilson upholds his duty. Oh, but that isn't the only surprise in store. Because after Sam follows through and obtains what turns out to be a package of mysterious but vital international importance, Ross invites Sam to a public gathering and a personal audience at the White House. They aren't chums. But Sam decides to step away from past grievances and show up anyway. Of course, he also decides to use the public view of the White House meeting to help his friend Isaiah Bradley. Isaiah is one of the super soldiers who was experimented on by the US government way back when. The man even wore the uniform of Captain America for a while. But then he was framed and thrown into prison for 30 years. Sam is determined to bring Isaiah with him and to force everyone to recognize that this giant of a man was wronged. And indeed, Sam and Isaiah's joint appearance at the White House event gets the news reporters buzzing. Not only that, but Ross pulls Sam in and hits him with an unexpected broadside. He wants him to start up the Avengers again. The world needs those heroes. It needs them now, Ross declares. Just about the time Sam is whispering the news to Isaiah and making plans in his head, however, something goes terribly wrong. Isaiah and 5 other men at the White House event suddenly go berserk and try to assassinate the president. It's insane, crazy. And after Isaiah runs, throwing people around like matchsticks and smashing through a White House window, Sam stops him. And Isaiah has no memory of the event. So, it looks like Sam will have to put the Avengers rebuild on the back burner. Instead, he has a mystery to solve and a friend to help. He'll have to not only be a shield-carrying hero, but a detective, too. Meanwhile, President Ross is beginning to look a little red around the collar. What's that all about? Sam makes heroic choices to save others throughout the film. But he does question at times if he was the right one to inherit Captain America's shield, since he never took the super serum and gained superpowers. Late in the movie, however, an old friend, Bucky, shows up to encourage him that Steve gave you that shield, not because you were perfect, but because you were you. Sam also takes a wannabe hero under his arm named Joaquin. He eventually wants to live up to wearing the mantle of the new Falcon. Sam gives him pointers and protects him in battle. And later, after Joaquin is injured, Sam encourages him. Sam essentially gives Joaquin the same encouragement that Bucky gave him. Questions are raised about President Ross' past and current choices. But he eventually makes it clear that he is trying to change his life for the better. An illness drives home the fact that his relationship with his estranged daughter, Betty, is of utmost importance to him. He eventually steels himself to contact her, and the two take steps toward reconciliation over the phone. Later still, Ross takes full responsibility for his wrongdoings and resigns his position as president. Betty comes to visit him in prison and they continue to repair their relationship. Thumping, riddling, zapping, and explosive violence consume screen time at every turn here. There are, for instance, massive explosions during an open sea battle between jets and warships. The jets let loose missiles and large caliber gunfire. Some attacks strike their metallic targets with huge eruptions and gouts of flame. Others are deflected away by Captain America's and the Falcon's wings. Though frankly, the very human Sam detonating missiles in midair and ripping open an F-18 cockpit with only his fancy suit and a shield is a bit less than credible. We don't often see bullets pierce and bloody their targets, but guns blaze regularly and men do fall. Sam doesn't shoot anyone, for instance, but he does use his shield and vibranium-reinforced wings to ricochet bullets into others. He also uses his wings to slice cars, jets and other vehicles, as well as sending the vehicles crashing in a flaming heap. In another instance, for example, the Red Hulk is shot repeatedly by various rounds of different caliber. And while the bullets somehow bounce off his tough exterior, blades drive home and stick in the raging beast's skin. He's also sliced open across the abdomen by one of Sam's wings. Sam in turn gets stabbed and shot a few times. Scores of men shoot weapons in his direction. He's also hit with massive blows from the Red Hulk as it smashes its way through trees, buildings, and the Washington Monument. Sam sent repeatedly hurtling into vehicles, trees, and walls. It's assumed that his vibranium-laced suit somehow absorbs most of that punishment, which is broadly similar to how Iron Man's armor likewise protects Tony Stark. Other than the above-mentioned incidents, we watch as men give battle with vicious blows. People pound away at one another in several different crowd scenes. Sam's shield regularly ricochets around against walls and foes' heads. People are slammed by heavy objects and furniture. A very small framed woman is also a part of a few of those skirmishes. Though she looks to be about 85 pounds wet, we're told that she came from the Black Widow factory and is a fierce fighter. We see that claim put to the test. There are several other deadly incidents worthy of mention as well. We see someone walk into a couple's home and then hear gunshots as they are murdered. On several occasions, men are mentally controlled and then turn as a group to murder someone. We glimpse the aftermath in one case as the camera gazes on a room full of bloodied bodies. After one of those mind-controlled attacks, the killer turns to the camera and puts his weapon under his chin. The camera looks away an instant before he pulls the trigger. Someone uses a sonic device to drive a man to his knees in agonizing torture. Then he turns the frequency up to painfully kill his victim. A sonic boom hits a crowd of men and sends them all sprawling into hard surfaces. Someone grabs a cinder block and smashes people in the head with it. People are stabbed in the chest and side with small blades. Men are knocked to the ground by electric taser zaps. Someone is sent to the hospital with massive burns all over his chest and shoulders. Sam drinks champagne in a limo and offers some to the others there. We learn that someone is taking a drug laced with gamma radiation. And that drug later turns someone into a huge red Hulk. Sam and Joaquin use Joaquin's tech skills to break into the White House's CVT system. And they later break into a high-security prison complex. We learn that a high-ranking government official hired a murderous team to steal valuable materials from another nation. Someone uses his gamma-enhanced brain to deduce the probabilities of things happening. He uses that information to hurt, control, belittle and kill others. Ross decides to use the force of the American military to attack another nation. "I've been a wartime general, now I'll be a wartime president," he proclaims. "I'll quickly admit that back in 2011, I enjoyed Captain America, the First Avenger. That film had an uplifting cinematic story, a real Golden Age comics vibe, heroes to cheer for and strong messages about patriotism as well as relying on one's strength of character. There were content issues to be wary of, to be sure. But all in all it was a pretty good comic book pick to gather the fam for." 5 Marvel Universe phases later and, let's just say that the Marvel movie family has been going through a lot of reeling and stumbling as of late. And if you're heading into this movie hoping for a sweet ride back to that Cap and his red, white and blue vibe, well, you won't quite find it here. The movie does try. Anthony Mackie is heroic and slips into his Falcon wings and behind his Captain America shield with lots of athletic flex. Harrison Ford as President Thaddeus Ross adds some movie gravitas. There are some tips of the hat to past Marvel storylines you may have forgotten. And there are even nice, kid-friendly messages stitched in here about living up to your potential when others doubt you and the power of accepting your past failings while reaching for a fresh start. Brave New World doesn't ever take the time to let us connect emotionally with its new stable of characters. It rushes breathlessly toward each successive and explosive confrontation like a cat with its tail afire. And it presents a fairly cynical worldview of corrupt politics and pessimistic heroes. On top of that, of course, is the superhero movie's weighty layer of almost too edgy violence and foul language. Those factors alone will cause many parents to pause, even if their kids are yelling passionately for massive CGI explosions and Red Hulk smashes. Wrap that all up in a review package with a vibranium bow, and I'll say that Captain America, Brave New World isn't the worst of the Marvel offerings. But it's not really worthy of breaking out that red, white and blue shield you've got stored in the garage either. Marvel have rarely found themselves facing quite as many obstacles as they did when putting together their first new Captain America film following the defining original trilogy and the climactic events of Endgame. They've been on a back foot for the best part of 2 entire phases, with the latest Phase 5's Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania and the Marvels both ranked amidst the lowest in the entire franchise, and only Gunn's Guardians conclusion and the left-field edition of Deadpool and Wolverine raising the box office pulses. They really needed Captain America, Brave New World to be the Avengers-sized hit of this phase, positioning it as such, and thus not backing down one bit when everything started to go off the rails. In fact, they doubled and tripled down. Planned for a 2024 release, the 2023 shot production tested poorly, and was pushed back a year, receiving a major overhaul in early 2024, ditching huge sequences and entire characters, and undergoing numerous reshoots that have now left it, despite being one of the top 5 grossing films of 2025, at a technical loss. It's not down to any one factor, really, but, whether or not it should have been, it clearly was an uphill struggle for them to position Anthony Mackie as the new Captain America. Perhaps a part of this was down to the fact that he had become so effortlessly confident as the on your left wingsuit-wearing Falcon, and Marvel's insistence upon spending almost every minute of his subsequent screen time showing his uncertainty with his new mantle, across an entire season of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, only seemed to fuel a similar audience uncertainty. Even now, in Brave New World, they spend half the plot portraying him as a man who still doesn't know whether he should be wearing the suit, making it far too easy for audiences to just sigh and go no, you shouldn't, just bring back the real Cap. Something which only likely got more messy when they jumped the gun on some of the rumored, and since supposedly debunked, returnees for the upcoming Avengers movies. Still, there was an ace in this deck. Harrison Ford. Replacing the late William Hurt, who had been playing comic character Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross almost since the very start of the MCU, and promoting Ross to president, Ford was absolutely gifted an opportunity to be the MVP to this chapter, with a really interesting, well-conceived arc to his character, sinking his teeth into a performance that actually required a subtle shift across the narrative, building towards the film's epic reveal and conclusion. But, rather than make that something for audiences to discover, the marketing campaign took over and slapped big red all over the posters, from the Red Fist smashing S.H.I.E.L.D. teaser to the full-blown trailer which basically gives away the entire final act set piece and spoils that whole arc. It's easy to see why they thought that's how they should, rather desperately, sell the movie, but when even kids come out questioning why Red Hulk only pops up at the end, but was in all the trailers and on the poster, you wonder whether this could have been an entirely different movie if it had kept a lid on its big red secret. The flip side is that despite all of this, all of the reshoots, all of the character replacements and abandonments, Rose Salazar and wrestler Seth Rollins having their scenes and characters ditched in favor of the late replacement Giancarlo Esposito, whose newly shot moments subsequently both stick out and feel redundant, they have fashioned a just about watchable slice of Marvel entertainment here, which should probably be regarded as some kind of minor miracle in itself. It's shot and edited to within an inch of its life, and whilst nobody is going to be particularly proud of how it turned out, it does result in a breakneck pacing that, though not smoothly papering over the seismic cracks in this terrain, does run so roughshod over it that you barely have the time to question some of the abandoned side stories, ill-conceived arcs, and inconsequential action beats. And, underneath it all, Ford still does justice to the role, which really is saying something under the circumstances. A different movie, and a different marketing campaign would have perhaps pulled him and his character journey to the fore as all this movie really needed, and let Mackie simply be Cap, rather than earn it for the dozenth time, and considering some reports that they basically shot 2 entire movies worth of footage, perhaps that film is out there somewhere. But we'll never know. And with the unexpected success of Thunderbolts * no relation, mercifully overshadowing the dismal critical and commercial failure of Brave New World, this will likely end up being another casualty on the path to the upcoming Avengers films which, with all that ride on them, will surely determine the fate of this universe once and for all. Despite the at times Frankenstein vibe to this production, it's chock full of really spectacular VFX sequences, producing an impressive scale, particularly in its final set piece, and rendering some tremendous creations as a result. Red Hulk himself is nicely realized as a comparable but different creation to the various green incarnations, at times more detailed, nuanced and, of course, distinctively Ford too. Of course it was a shambolic succession of reshoots, and likely the VFX team couldn't always keep up, with some of the set pieces looking much smaller in scale, and the aerial scenes in particular wobbling around the edges, bordering on cheap and unfinished, if you were feeling really unforgiving. None of that's really a fault of the presentation, however, which does its absolute best to promote the sheer spectacle of it all, with some gorgeous WCG and Dolby Vision enhanced HDR bringing the cascade of vibrant comic book white tones to offer. The entire Cherry Blossom finale may look utterly staged, but it's still gorgeously so. Limitations of some of the weaker effects, and editing of the hodgepodge of old and newly shot footage notwithstanding, this is a slick, hard to fault presentation. Likewise, the accompanying Dolby Atmos track is hard to fault. It's a persistent, aggressive effort to keep the feature propulsively moving forward, in spite of the patchwork quilt of a film stitched together beneath it. Dialogue gets some prioritization, despite being hardly the priority, with the breakneck pacing / frenetic editing. Meaning the surrounds are almost constantly engaged, engulfing you with noisy noise in a desperate bid to distract, which may actually work if you turn it up loud. It's suitably immersive, bristling with intensity and energy even if the script is nowhere near prepared to back that up, with fabulous effects and a score it often doesn't deserve, making for a largely demo-sonic offering. Were you around when the Coca-Cola Company came out with New Coke in 1985? I was in high school and remembered it being the biggest flop of all time. New Coke was unapologetically trying to be like Pepsi Cola, which had an amazing promotion called the Pepsi Challenge, which was a basic tasting competition both on TV and in malls across America where consumers would be asked which cola they liked better, Pepsi or Coca-Cola. Pepsi was winning this culture war, so Coke decided to create a Pepsi-ish drink called New Coke. The rage and outcry was swift, resulting in sagging Coke sales. Coke learned its lesson and switched back to the original formula within 2 months. The CEO of Pepsi was quoted saying, "I think, by the end of their Coke's nightmare, they figured out who they really are. Caretakers. They can't change the taste of their flagship brand. They can't change its imagery. All they can do is defend a heritage they nearly abandoned in 1985. The Marvel Universe has been caretakers of their heroes and villains' images since Iron Man graced our theaters in 2008, and to a lesser extent with the previous Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies before 2008. Many of these characters remain very close to the comic book versions, although some have had some gender and / or race swapping within the MCU. However, this is the first time a major MCU character has completely emptied itself only to be recreated, with permission by its former occupant, to be something totally different with the same name. Of all the MCU characters, my favorite is Steve Rogers' Captain America, with his character going from an extreme optimist in the original Avengers to suspicious and battle-weary in Endgame, all without losing his enduring honor and drive. To fill that legacy with Sam Wilson's Falcon character is a big swing. Does it pay off and soar, or will it fly into a window with a thud? Directed by Julius Onah, Captain America, Brave New World seems to be as much a Hulk sequel, the 2008 Edward Norton version, as it is a Captain America follow-up. We are reintroduced to Thunderbolt Thaddeus Ross, who was the mustachioed general in the MCU, played by the late William Hurt, but he is now President Ross, played by a clean-shaven Harrison Ford. President Ross has big plans. He wants to reform the Avengers using the new Captain America, aka Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, as his driving force for a new supergroup that is owned and controlled by the government. Sam Wilson became Captain America when an aged Steve Rogers gave over his shield in Endgame. Sam and Bucky Barnes had an MCU series, Falcon and Winter Soldier, where they stopped a terrorist organization and found out more about the super soldier program the government has been experimenting with since WW2. They met Isaiah Bradley, played by an intense Carl Lumbly, who was a previously experimented on super soldier in the 1940s and 50s but was discarded by the government because of his race. Isaiah resurfaces here as Sam allows him to train the new Falcon sidekick Joaquin Torres, Danny Ramirez. They are all invited to the White House for a multinational meeting focusing on Celestial Island. Yes, the emerging and deceased celestial in the Indian Ocean from 2021's Eternals, which has yielded the miracle metal adamantium. Of course it doesn't go well, as Isaiah Bradley and a few other attendees mysteriously open fire on the president after being subjected to their flashing phone screens triggered by master criminal Samuel Stearns, aka the leader, who is played by Tim Blake Nelson and was seen last in the 2008 Incredible Hulk. Isaiah is jailed and Sam is on the journey to find out how this has happened and, more importantly, why. Along the way we find out Stearns has been slowly poisoning President Ross with gamma radiation. You know where that leads if you have seen the trailers and posters, as well as creating a tense multinational conflict over Celestial Island, especially between America and Japan. Sam and his sidekick Joaquin must track down clues and hints to uncover how far up the political ladder these dangerous plans go and how far Stearns will go for revenge for what has been done to him by Ross. The character of Sam Wilson's Captain America is one that carries over from Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is a man who knows he is not able to fill the shoes of the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s previous occupant, as well as not being able to fully trust the government which employs his services. He also is wary of how his race colors, no pun intended, his expectations of trust and goodwill from his government superiors. Anthony Mackie does a good job of looking conflicted throughout most of his scenes. The only time he looks at ease is when he is with Isaiah. This Captain America has never taken the super soldier serum, which is lamented and considered many times in this film, so he must augment his skills with lots of MCU tech, including vibranium wings and suit plus high-tech armaments and creative uses of the shield that makes him more like Iron Man than Cap in most respects. There are a lot of places where you have to suspend belief as he throws his shield at missiles and lands in a superhero pose while traveling at the speed of sound without his legs turning to accordions. But hey, it's the MCU, right? This film was widely criticized for its reshoots, rescheduling, and recasting, so it's a little bit of a mess narratively and optically. There are some spots where the green screen is dismal and noticeable. Yet there are some really good effects in the film, especially with the Red Hulk. His teeth look amazingly natural for some reason. I saw this in IMAX 3D, and the 3D effects looks very good as far as the depth of field and layering goes. All the actors are good to very good, with a surprisingly animated Harrison Ford not phoning it in. This is very much his film, it seems, as Anthony Mackie is pushed to the side as his CGI self takes over throughout much of the movie. A too brief plot point of the Serpent Society mercenary group takes place in the beginning of the film, which includes a great part from the always entertaining Giancarlo Esposito as Sidewinder. I wanted more Serpent Society, as this was one of the best, and least respected, supervillain groups in comics. Maybe they will resurface somewhere down the line. There is an end of credits stinger with another cameo from the 2008 Hulk movie plus a tip of the hat towards the upcoming Secret Wars story arc. At a PG-13, there are many instances of killing and violence, including stabbings, shootings, many explosions and peril. The language isn't too bad for a PG-13, with the profanity consisting of a dozen SHS, a handful of DAS, 2 instances of using the Lord's name in vain. Younger viewers may not be interested in all the political intrigue, but they will enjoy the ending fight scene with Red Hulk and the air battle over Celestial Island. However, most of the movie may not hold their interest all the way through, as it is exposition heavy with characters that aren't all that interesting. There is a phrase that caught my attention when Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, makes a cameo and says, "Steve gave them something to believe in, you give them something to aspire to." Aspire means to direct one's hope to achieving a higher goal. I think the idea is that Steve Rogers was so good, so pure that to become him was impossible, but it inspired belief in something better in the world. Sam Wilson is not as good or pure as Steve is in a sense, but because Sam is down to earth, it is easier to become like him and thus achieve much. Peter is saying yes, Jesus is the Christ and thus not able to be totally imitated, because he is God. Because Jesus is God, we can believe in him for our eternal existence. Yet Peter also says, despite not being able to totally imitate him, we are called to aspire to be like him and to follow in his steps. It's a call to challenge us to model our lives, to be like him, and all the while to trust only in him as the Christ for our eternal hope as God in the flesh. So is the new Captain America like the ill-fated new Coke? Can the Sam Wilson character be a caretaker of the Steve Rogers legacy? I don't think he can, personally. However, it's not a bad thing to be different. I see Sam Wilson as Coke Zero. It's pretty close but with a little more artificial flavorings. The good news is that as you get used to diet soda over time, you tend not to miss the original so much. It just takes time and intake, and judging from the film slate that Marvel has coming out in the next few years, I think we may get used to, and even appreciate, the new Cap. This was disappointing. The trailer looked great. It felt like a 70s paranoid political thriller. And in many ways, my favorite MCU movie is like that Captain America, the Winter Soldier, with fantastic action scenes. Brave New World has none of that. Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, formerly the Falcon, is now Captain America, and I heard conservatives love it. Winky face. They had been building this since Endgame. They even released the series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Thunderbolt Ross, Harrison Ford, is now the President of the United States. William Hurt played the role in the past, but he passed away in 2022. Rest in peace. Ross led the project to create the Incredible Hulk. He was a decorated soldier, general, U.S. Secretary of State, and now the POTUS. There was an assassination attempt on him at the White House by Isaiah Bradley, Carl Lumbly. This is one of the problems of Brave New World. I think that the Isaiah Bradley storyline is too complex. In the 1950s, there was a superhero gap because Captain America died in World War II. The government tricked Officer Bradley into getting a tetanus shot, which was actually a super soldier serum. He gained the same abilities as Steve Rogers. He even fought the Winter Soldier at the Korean War, and from all accounts, FCK'd him up. He was the first recorded to have removed the metal arm of the Winter Soldier. But did you know that Isaiah Bradley was imprisoned for 30 years? As I've said, his backstory is complicated and not explained in the movie. Apparently, the US government had been doing the super soldier serum thing. There were 300 subjects, all black men. This is a big cover-up, and the US government does not want the public to know it. So the North Koreans during the war caught all these black men and other US soldiers to become POWs. However, the US government does not want them rescued. They want to blow up the camp. It's the perfect cover-up. They call it cleaning. Isaiah Bradley went AWOL to rescue all the test subjects and POWs. And for that, he got 30 years. But in prison, the experiments continued. He only got out because a sympathetic nurse declared him dead and gave him a new identity so he could live in peace in Baltimore. Aside from the complicated backstory of Isaiah Bradley, the best way to watch Brave New World is to have watched movies like Hulk, 2003, and The Incredible Hulk, 2008, Eternals, 2021, Black Widow, 2021, and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021. That's a big criticism of Marvel these days. You need to do some homework to watch one movie. And the more it ties to the other MCU, the more it gets complicated. In the beginning and in the trailer, it felt cool. It's like a Marvel movie with political thriller elements. Maybe it would be smart. Maybe it would be cool to see Captain America fly. But no. I'm an action scenes guy. I don't remember one good action scene. And as usual with MCU these days, the grand climax is CGI slop. I will echo the concern of fellow movie critic, Alonso Durald. It seems that Marvel is building all the character stuff in the series, and then the movies are just CGI and explosions. That's not good. So the CGI and the action scenes suck. However, there are still stars in the movie. Carl Lumbly, who plays Isaiah Bradley, is one. He has two. He is the emotional core of the movie. The incarceration of Isaiah Bradley is largely due to systemic racism and institutional failure. Because Steve Rogers did the same thing. He went AWOL and rescued a bunch of POWs from the Hydra camp. But he was celebrated as a hero. He was definitely not imprisoned. But Bradley, because the US is hiding a cover-up, put an innocent man in jail. Another star is Giancarlo Esposito. From what I heard, the movie had a tortured production with 5 screenwriters. They did several reshoots. And Seth Volker, the character of Giancarlo Esposito, was shoehorned in. Despite that, Esposito is so good at playing a villain. He made a meal out of oatmeal, or out of nothing. Lastly, let's give credit to the main man himself, Anthony Mackie. But let's start with some criticism. His charisma is not enough to be Captain America. But maybe it's not his fault. When I heard that the Falcon will be the next Captain America, I thought it was cool. Captain America can fly now. There's also added tension because Anthony Mackie had to channel that self-doubt. Sam Wilson was also never injected with the super soldier serum. So he's just a regular guy. Can a regular guy take all the abuse of being a superhero? They did not lack talent here. For God's sake, Harrison Ford and Sebastian Stan were your supporting cast. Anthony Mackie deserves better from the MCU. Same for Sam Wilson, a hero truly worthy of Captain America's shield. Because, somehow, the uneven and disappointing Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a better showcase for both actor and character than Captain America: Brave New World. The 4th film in the franchise is a disjointed, poorly paced, poorly edited movie whose exciting action sequences can't overcome some of the worst dialogue in MCU history. There's no way to sugarcoat Captain America: Brave New World's dialogue. Much of the film feels like someone tried to write Aaron Sorkin-esque quick banter without ever having actually seen anything Sorkin has done. It's rarely funny or witty but often awkward. It doesn't help that Captain America: Brave New World also feels like it's frequently playing at 1.25x speed. Characters respond to each other before any human could even process what is being said to them. That makes for some cringy, forced interactions. The harder the movie tries to be funny, the worse it gets. When Captain America: Brave New World isn't busy being painfully unfunny, it goes for big, inspirational moments. Unfortunately, they fall as flat as Sam Wilson's big monologue from the last time we saw him on Disney Plus. It's not Mackie's fault because, once again, he's having to carry a chunky script. But his performance only makes the movie even more disappointing. In the few scenes where Mackie gets to work with good material, you can see that the film could have been better with a better screenplay. One thing that doesn't disappoint are the action sequences. There are 2 major set pieces in Captain America: Brave New World, both teased in the film's trailers. One is a battle that sees Sam and his new partner Danny Ramirez's returning Joaquin Torres, the new Falcon, take to the sky in a dogfight with fighter jets. Ramirez has a natural charm, but no one suffers more from the script than him because Torres is the proverbial funny one. That's not the best spot for anyone in a movie that rarely executes on its attempts at wit. Bad dialogue is not a problem during their big fight, though. It also looks great and is very well executed, something that is only true during action sequences. It's almost as though a totally different team edited scenes where people are in peril. The big Captain America/Red Hulk showdown is also very entertaining. It's one of the movie's most impressive feats since we've seen so many Hulk fights at this point. But using the White House and DC as the setting makes it feel fresh and original because Captain America: Brave New World doesn't tone down on the destruction. There are a few huge exceptions to the movie's otherwise very good CGI. The first is Tim Blake Nelson's Samuel Stearns, aka the leader. His appearance is unintentionally hilarious when it's supposed to be upsetting. The other VFX problem is Marvel clearly did some reshoots on green screens it bought at a yard sale in 1997. Those moments stick out like a giant red rage monster atop the White House. Some are so bad I was genuinely shocked they made it into the final edit of Captain America, Brave New World. They looked like something from a Sharknado movie. The two big action sequences happen in the second half of the film, which is a big improvement over the first half since there's less talking. However, there are some aspects of Captain America, Brave New World that work throughout. Harrison Ford is very good as new President of the United States, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. He's a man struggling against his natural instincts for a good reason. He's desperate to change his image and his legacy so his daughter will see he's a good man. That's one of the movie's best ideas, but it doesn't invest in it as much as it could. Brave New World also undercuts itself by actually having Red Hulk show up at all. I get it. I get it. People want to see Red Hulk. It's a comic book story, after all. But the movie is still telling a story, and it would be far more meaningful and effective one if Ross never hulked out. We'd have to get into spoilers to explain why. Captain America, Brave New World also avoids being a total disaster, thanks to some very good supporting performances. Giancarlo Esposito is predictably great as Sidewinder. He doesn't quite have the role you might expect, but he's important to the plot. Carl Lumbly is just as predictably excellent as the super soldier Isaiah Bradley. His role is actually much bigger than trailers indicated, and he serves as a grounding, emotional anchor for the story. And throughout the film, minor characters respond to Sam Wilson in a way that feels real and human. It strengthens both Cap as a character and the story. This film, directed by Julius Onah, screenplay by Rob Edwards, story by Rob Edwards, based on Marvel Comics, produced by Kevin Feige, starring Anthony Mackie, cinematography Kramer Morgenthau, edited by Matthew Schmidt, music by Laura Karpman, production company Marvel Studios, distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. Release dates February 11, 2025. Running time 118 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $180 million. Box office $415 million.